I'm joined now in our Washington studio by Paolo von Schirach, who's president of the Global Policy Institute, a public policy research firm. Paolo, every year the US State Department releases this list, and every year we hear pretty much the same countries over and over again. So is there really anything new in this report?
No, and quite frankly, my own opinion is that the United States should not be in this business of issuing these reports and giving scores and grades to the other members of the international community. It's not, I don't think it's very helpful. I think it is helpful for the United States to uphold, as a matter of general policy, respect for human rights at home and abroad. But to give individual scores to different countries and also, how can I say, opening itself to the criticism that friends of the United States kind of get off lightly.
Okay, so let me pause on that, because that was going to be my next question, really the objectivity and whether the U.S. has a political agenda. For example, very harsh tone criticizing Iran, the tone much more measured when talking about Saudi Arabia. And UN would say that Saudi Arabia's campaign in Yemen has caused a humanitarian catastrophe.
Absolutely.
So, to your point.
Yes, obviously we got, double standards here. Clearly, I mean, it's hard to defend Iran in multiple levels.
It's hard to defend a lot of these countries mentioned in the report.
But Saudi Arabia is not this white lily, pure flower. Let's also look at, human rights violations at home in Saudi Arabia, religious minorities, others, not to mention, even though things are on the way up, it seems improving, obviously gender inequality, treatment of women and all that. And yes, as you mentioned, the war in Yemen, it's a disaster. It's a humanitarian disaster that we don't quite get the full understanding of it because the news coverage is not as intense as in other places, but there's an enormous healthcare crisis, no medicines, no nothing.
Would this report perhaps have more credibility around the world if the U.S. also looked upon its own behavior, the injustices, and some would say human rights abuses in this country?
Indeed. Again, we are not beyond blame. And that's why I said we should not in the business of being sort of above the fray and say, hey, this is how we see it, good guy, bad guy, so-so guy, improved guy. I think it's not helpful. And quite frankly, I think it lost its value. I mean, the Human Rights Campaign had and Focus had a lot of value when it was brought in back in the Carter administration. And this was really a weapon, a political weapon to hit the Soviet Union and the other countries and say, we are democracies, they're bad guys, and so we are for human rights, and human rights means democracy and political participation and all that.
Do these types of reports really ever accomplish anything?
No.
Do any of these countries mention Syria, DPRK, Myanmar, China, Iran, Venezuela? The behavior that they are alleging never really changes.
Indeed. So as I said, this becomes a kind of a futile exercise. This is why I think that maybe, in this administration or soon enough, they should kind of quietly drop it. All right. That would be my recommendation.
All right. Maybe they'll listen to you. You never know. Paolo von Schirach, thank you so much.